Hello. Well, today we are doing Doberman myths. So I'm busting some of the myths we've been sent in as questions and also myths that we've been asked randomly by people walking down the street or also coming to look at our puppies with us being puppy breeders of Dobermans. So we're real experts in the breed. We just spend so much time studying, researching the breed, and we have a lot of Dobermans. So, first myth. Do Dobermans just suddenly turn on their owners one day? This is a great question. You've definitely heard this one before. So yes, this is a myth. And with Dobermans, it's about like genetics, upbringing, and yeah, I think this was a myth from bad breeding. So I guess in the 70s, there were some Dobermans that well, in the 70s, because obviously, like when they were first bred, it was bred by like somebody who was like really like, trying to create this amazing breed. But then in the 70s, like it got a little bit relaxed, the breeding, there was some bad breeding. And yeah, Dobermans were like more likely to attack. So it kind of like damaged their reputation a little bit, but then the breeding got back on track, and it was like responsible breeders breeding, and now you have the Doberman that you have today when you don't really hear of that happening at all. So yes, this is why we are quite like some people are surprised when we say that when we sell our puppies, they've got like a breeding exemption on them, and it's because like in order for us to think that somebody's gonna like maintain the responsible ethical standards of the breed, we want to like make sure of that, and we're not like that well versed in everybody's like ethical disciplines in terms of breeding, so we tend to like restrict it to like pet only sales, because you've really got to like have the right people who are like interested in the we call ourselves preservation breeders, so you're preserving the breed and you're also like enhancing the breed in terms of like selecting like certain qualities that are really admirable. So like we'd select like the best puppies in our litter in order to like go on to like become like breeding dogs in the future. So yes, that is a myth. They don't suddenly turn on their owners, but there's like genetics and bad breeding, and also like how you raise the dog. Um, okay, next myth. Isn't a Doberman basically born aggressive? So this is a question that is also a myth. And people say that whilst eyeing the dog. So um, this is a difference between like alert versus aggressive, and Dobermans are very alert. When they stand alert, they almost look like they've grown in size, and they look like a much bigger dog. And yes, they are alert dogs, and for most people who want a dog, a working dog, a protection dog, then alert is actually quite a positive characteristic, but confidence can get misread as danger, and I do like a confident Doberman. There's a whole lot of Doberman traits depending on what exactly it is you're looking for, but we do like our Dobermans confident. Okay, this question is another one that we've got. Aren't Dobermans dangerous around children? And this is a huge fear-based question. It wasn't that long ago, perhaps last year, we had two parents come around looking for a Doberman for their family. One of them had had dogs before, the other hadn't, and they asked me, "Oh, we've got like some children, and one of them's like under the age of 1. It's a baby. Will the dog be okay around babies?" I mean, this isn't the first time I've had that question. I've had that question a lot, but I think my answer was misinterpreted by them, because I said, "Oh yes, but you'd have to supervise the dog around the child," and I think they took that to mean that if they pop out the room for a second, then it's like game over. But what I actually wanted to convey in retrospect was the fact that Dobermans can, like a Doberman puppy, because I'd recommend like if you have a family with children, to start it as a puppy unless that dog's already been around children, because Dobermans are best around children when they've already been like raised around children. It's the same with other things, like you can raise Dobermans around chickens, cats, other dogs, people, but they have to have been exposed to that, because exposing a dog at an older age that's never been exposed to something, you might not get the opportunity to train it around those as you can with a puppy. So I'd say, yeah, as a puppy, they can be like puppies, like high energy, they can do zoomies, they can be running around, and it's very easy to like accidentally like knock a child off balance, especially a young child. So when I said supervise, I meant like supervise not just the dog but also the child, because it works both ways. So you teach the dog to be gentle around the child, and then you also teach the child to be gentle with the dog. So you teach the child not to pull the dog's ears or pull the dog's tail, and like it's like a mutual respect thing. And yeah, then you get, I mean, there are loads of families that have children and babies around Dobermans. So yeah, that's that's just a question of like how you're like socializing them and how you're like raising them to be with each other. Okay, this question here is, don't Dobermans need a firm hand or they'll take over? Well, this is dominance theory in disguise. So Dobermans do need a leader. I think most dogs need a leader, and um, I think too much force can backfire with the breed. So you don't want to think of it as, I made this mistake as well because I didn't really understand the actual nuance of this concept, in that like too much force is not the way to go. It's about like being consistent, and you get much further as if you like the dog sort of knows what you want and expect from it, and when you're consistent with that, it's easy to tell. Whereas if you're, you know, asking your dog to sit on one occasion and it doesn't sit on another occasion, you ask it to sit and you want it to sit, well, it's kind of looked at previous examples where it hasn't followed a command, and then you've just moved on to the next thing. So you do have to be quite consistent. They like straight training and structure, and some people say, you think you're training a Doberman, but the Doberman is training you. And I'd say that with them being so smart, then you really do have to be on top of your game. But yeah, too much force and it backfires. There's a lot of misconception around this. So yeah, it's something we'll explore further in another video. But yeah, you've got to almost like build a relationship with the dog, and a relationship based on respect and consistency, so that the dog really understands what's expected of what is expected of it, and you really get like a consistent result with the dog. If you are consistent with the dog, if every time you ask the dog to do X, it does X, then when you ask your dog to do X, it will do X. But if you ask it to do X, it doesn't do X, and then that's fine. And the next time, you can't expect to have like inconsistent input and consistent results. So you want the dog to consistently respond in a certain way. Then I'd say you have to put that in as the input. Okay, this is a myth. I've been asked this. I got asked this at a train station once, but I've been asked this a few times. Can a Doberman even live in a normal house or flat? This is not just relevant in the UK. I mean, as you can tell, I'm, UK based, but I've lived in Canada, I've lived in the US, I've lived like in so many countries. I've lived in apartments in Canada, I've lived in condos in, Los Angeles. So yeah, I know we have people listening from all over the world. That's why I give this nuance. But it's assumption versus reality. And when we got our first Doberman, we were like, well, let's wait till we move to a house. And then, it's taking a little bit too long to move to a house. So we said, okay, we'll get one anyway. We live right next to a huge park, which is much bigger than, 99% of people's gardens. And it's like a 30-second walk. Why not just take the dog to a park? And actually, that was actually quite wise, because even if we had a huge garden, the dog can't stay in the garden every day. The dog has to be going out on walks anyway. And, walking down the street is getting so much more mental stimulation. And also it keeps the dog, it keeps the dog's mind more mentally active. If we don't just walk in the same direction, we walk down different streets. We go to the park a lot, like with the dog. So yeah, having a dog in an apartment was not a big issue. Even if you live in a flat or an apartment, you're not going to have the dog just staying in the house. And the same with a house, you're going to be taking the dog out anyway. However, if you do have some outside space, it is helpful. And we had a little balcony living in the flat, so that was useful. Okay. Yeah, I mean, Dobermans are indoor dogs that do want proximity anyway. So even if you lived in a 10-bedroom house, they're not going to be like 3 rooms away. They're going to be wherever you are. We'll actually move on to that like a little bit later because we do have a question on that. Okay, and next question. Do cropped ears and docked tails make them more aggressive? Um, and people genuinely believe this, but you've got to imagine that like nowadays, like cropping ears and docking tails are banned in like, I say the majority of countries because all across Europe has banned it. It's like totally illegal. And also I think Australia and New Zealand have banned it as well. So, I'd say most countries don't have it, and I can tell you that they're not. It's not to do with cropping the ears and docking the tails. And on this point, I will say that the ears, like the long ears, are totally functional. Some people don't recognize them as well without the like trademark pointy ears. And I remember getting my first Doberman through the park and somebody telling me as we were walking through the park, are you sure that's definitely not a Doberman? You should get that checked out because it doesn't look anything like I like a Doberman. He was like so sure that it wasn't a Doberman because it had the cropped ears and it just looked kind of like a more like a regular dog. But yeah, it's perfectly functional with the ears. And I've also heard people say that if a Doberman's ears get injured, they'll never really heal, and like as a medical issue. Having said that, like our Doberman, like our first Doberman, like she had like when we picked her up, she had like a cut in her ear from where another puppy had like bitten her, and she's still got the scar to this day. And since she's been with us, we've had like other puppies like bite her ears, and there's been a little bit of blood, and it's healed fine. There's no need to go to a like vet. There's been like no infection or anything. So that was one of my big fears when before I even got a Doberman. I was like, well, what if the ears get injured? Like, what are we gonna do? But I mean, I think unless the ear's like partially hanging off, I really can't see that as being a big issue. And like Dobermans like can play fight, and especially like a puppy, like the puppies that she has around her, sometimes they don't like know their boundaries yet, so they will be like sometimes they will be like biting a little bit too hard and stuff. So yeah, I feel like the ears are probably a little. I understand sometimes it's not just about like the ears; it's about like perception as well. But I'd say, yeah, whether they're pointy and cropped or they're like floppy, I think the actual effects are very similar. So yeah, I wouldn't say that would make it a dog more aggressive or anything like that. There are some people who genuinely believe it, but this is more like a bias. And looks change perception, not temperament. Like I live in London in the UK now, and I have a Doberman. Well, I mean, all our Dobermans have like floppy ears. However, we have somebody in our neighborhood who has dogs with like the cropped ears that was like imported from another country. And they said to me, like people cross over the road when they see our Doberman because they're like, scared of it. And I remember thinking that's insane because nobody's ever crossed over the road when they've seen our Doberman. It's exactly the same breed. The only difference is the ears. So I do appreciate that there is a difference in perception with the breed. And some people who have Dobermans, they want people to actually know it's a Doberman. So if you do want everyone to see it to know it's a Doberman, then yeah, those ears are really quite trademarking the breed. Okay, are Dobermans actually hard to train? So this is often asked by people who've heard stories. And I would say that Dobermans are very smart. So yes, they're very smart. So sometimes, people say, well, you don't train a Doberman trains you. Sometimes they can, use their, intelligence almost against you if you're not careful. So yeah, you have to be quite on the ball with Dobermans. And I think with a lot of dogs, even if you train them as puppies, they can kind of regress. They can kind of forget things. So you have to like be consistent and keep training them. But yeah, any any trainer you go to would recommend that you keep consistently training that dog. It's not something you do as a puppy and then it's all done. It's it's something you do throughout the Doberman's life. Let's see. Do Dobermans only bond with one person? There is truth in that, and that's why the police don't use Dobermans, because if you imagine the police, police dogs would probably have to get used to having multiple handlers, and Dobermans tend to be quite loyal to one person, whereas the German Shepherds, they don't really care who their handler is. So that's why that's the main reason why the police don't use them, because they want a dog that any handler can come in and work with. So yes, they are quite loyal to one person. This does come up constantly, but there is a difference. I'd say I've put this down as a myth because there's a difference between loyalty and exclusivity. And you've got to understand the nuance of how bonding really works in a household. So they'll establish like one person as like the leader or their main person in the household. However, they can have bonds with everyone, but they've got like a particularly close bond to one person in the household. Okay. Oh, okay. We've got a couple more questions here. Let's see. Can you ever trust a Doberman off lead? So I'd say this is about recall and handler focus. You want to make sure the dog has good recall, and I remember our first Doberman as a puppy had amazing recall, like so good. And then as she got a little bit older, an older puppy, she started to lose it, especially when she was like, having fun with other dogs playing in the park. So you do have to, we did have to like retrain it. But yeah, if a dog's got good recall, I would, I'd say that would be one that you could have off the lead. And handler focus is quite important, especially with Dobermans as protection dogs. I mean, if like a lot of people who get Dobermans, you're interested in a Doberman as a protection dog, then you'd want the dog to be quite handler focused. And I think when we first got our first Doberman, I wanted the dog to be sociable with other dogs, which I achieved. The dog is extremely sociable with other dogs, never barks at other dogs, really good with other dogs. But that means when we go out, the dog's interested in other dogs, and not as, when you're interested in other dogs, you kind of lose the focus on the handler. I feel like indoors, the dog was always like focused on the handler because there was no other dogs around. Well, no other dogs to focus on. But outdoors, I think we try to encourage a lot of socialization as a puppy with other dogs, to the point where like when we're out, the dog might be more interested in like another dog than the handler. So I think we've like reeled that in over time, but we kind of realized in retrospect that yes, it's great to socialize it, but with these particular breeds, you want them like very focused on the handler. For instance, I can tell you about a few examples, but if you were, say out walking and an attacker like came up to you, you'd want the dog to be focused on you and not like 20-30 yards away playing with another dog. Having said that, I was surprised when that same dog was 6 months old, and usually at 6 months old, Dobermans aren't really like don't have any aggressive nature, but somebody walked up to me and was like being like fairly aggressive. It was kind of escalating. And this dog who'd walked away and was completely like, playing with another dog in the park, like turned around and came back to me, which is, quite difficult to do when the dog's just distracted. I was really surprised to see how the dog like just knew something wasn't right. And I'd say the aggression level was like quite medium. It wasn't extreme, but just that instinct in the dog. And my reaction didn't change. It wasn't like a super, super aggressive situation. But perhaps the dog had better instincts than I did, because I didn't really see that escalating as far as it did. Anyway, that's a story for another time. So let's see, any other myths? Okay, I think we've got time for one more. And it's, why do Dobermans follow you everywhere? Is that anxiety? This is a fantastic final myth, because Yes, they do follow you everywhere. I've seen it with like young Dobermans. I've seen it with like Dobermans of all ages. And even if you want to like get something from across the room, you know, a lot of the time the dogs will follow you. So you have to like you know, lose like some personal space, but you can train the dog to like give you space. There's easy commands you can train the dog to, like, you know, give you more space. And like a dog moving back is like fairly easy to train. So you can, you know, if you establish a particular word you want to use to tell the dog to move back. I've seen people use different words. Then that's something you can use. So yes, they are a loyal breed. So yes, they do follow you everywhere, which is what you want for a protection dog. You want a protection dog to be by your side. So they are Velcro dogs. Like they are very Velcro dogs. And let's see, three facts. I've got three facts here for you before we go. So don't forget to like and subscribe. But we've got three Doberman facts that most people don't know about Dobermans that I wanted to share with you as a thank you for staying to the end of this video. So fact number one, Dobermans weren't bred to guard property. They were bred to guard people. For those of you who know the story about the person who started the breed, he bred the breed to protect him as a tax collector in Germany, as he was going door to door with a lot of money collecting taxes from people. So they were bred to be close to one person protecting them, and that's why they're so loyal. So they will track you, they'll watch doors, and they'll position themselves between you and a stranger because of what they were bred for. Now, fact number two, Dobermans are one of the breeds most affected by separation stress. And yes, I'd say it's, you know, a lot of Dobermans do end up with separation anxiety, but it can be avoided, I'd say, especially when the dog's young and you're training the dog. Don't just leave the dog randomly for a long period of a time. Start off with slowly introducing the dog to you leaving. So for 5 minutes at first, and then you can increase that to 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, to the point where like you'll be gone for a few hours and the dog will barely notice. So just reinforces to the dog that yes, you will be coming back. But it's not because they're weak, it's because their nervous system is wired for human proximity. So they do like that proximity to their handler and their owners. And the last fact I'm going to leave you with is that a Doberman's loyalty can override self-preservation. So this is true. So poor breeding and poor handling can have serious consequences with this breed. So thank you for staying to the end of this video. If this video has changed how you see Dobermans, subscribe, because this is the type of honest content that we're going to keep making.